Good evening. I decided to do my persuasive speech on coercion, torture, or brainwashing are always bad against enemy combatants. I will start by reading the definition of torture as defined by the United Nations. For the purposes of this convention, the term torture means any act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted on a person for such purposes as obtaining from him or a third person information or a confession, punishing him for an act he or a third person has committed or is suspected of having committed, or intimidating or coercing him or a third person, or for any reason based on discrimination of any kind, when such pain or suffering is inflicted by or at the instigation of or with the consent or acquiescence of public official or other person acting in an official capacity. It does not include pain or suffering arising only from, inherent, or incidental to lawful sanctions. Mistreatments of prisoners of war, even for the sake of obtaining information deemed critical to self-defense, has long been considered a violation of the law of war, but one that is regularly upheld in the breach. Now, this is prior to the American Civil War, but it was thought that the practice had been outlawed. The Lieber Code, which was adopted by the Union Army to define the law of war as it existed at the time, explains: honorable men, when captured, will abstain from giving to the enemy information concerning their own army, and the modern law of war permits no longer the use of any violence against prisoners in order to extort the desired information or to punish them for having given false information. This was a long time ago, so and even back then, I'm pretty sure they didn't follow the rules. So now, this is the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of prisoners of war, which is Article 17, Paragraph 4, provides the general rule for interrogation of prisoners of war. And it states, no physical or mental torture, nor any other form of coercion may be inflicted on prisoners of war to secure from the information of any kind whatever. Prisoners of war who refuse to answer may not be threatened, insulted, or exposed to unpleasant or disadvantageous treatments of any kind. Now, all countries are supposed to follow the Geneva Conventions, but not all do. And a prime example of that was Germany during World War I and World War II, because they did not get the memo, especially with the brutal murders of over 5 million Jews. So, to me, all these laws and rules are there to help the wrongdoers. And I don't see why I need to show mercy to someone who, for no reason, tried to erase the culture from existence. That being said, this is happening a lot with ISIS and the Taliban. They don't follow the Geneva Convention rules. So, to me, there has to be exceptions. There has to be. The GC, the Geneva Conventions, governs the treatment of civilians who fall into the hands of the enemy. This was in place during World War II, so including those residing in the territory of that power as enemy aliens and the civilian population of occupied territory. Civilians in occupied territory are protected persons under the 4th Geneva Convention and are entitled under Article 27 in all circumstances to respect for their persons, their honor, their family rights, their religious convictions and practices, and their manners and customs. Like I said, the Nazis did not get the memo. While an occupying power is permitted to take such measures of control and security in regard to protected persons as may be necessary as a result of war. Article 27 provides further that they shall at all times be humanly treated and shall be protected especially against all acts of violence or threats thereof, and against insults and public curiosity. I personally am a veteran of Operation Enduring Freedom, which is the Afghan conflict, And when in country, our enemies hidden in the civilian population, and they do not care if civilians died whenever they would detonate an IED or whenever we were RPG'd, etc., etc. They didn't care who died as long as they got to us. So I don't see how it is that we're supposed to follow these rules and against people that do what these people did. And I saw it firsthand, man, firsthand. Not saying that we were perfect. There's bad soldiers too. But we had so many rules of engagement that we needed to follow, and a lot of them were beneficial to our enemy. A lot of them, The same enemy that, if given the opportunity to capture one of us, would do so and then post a video online of that same soldier being either decapitated or burned alive. You can look up in the internet, does torture work? And it's always going to be no. I'm not saying that I'm pro-torture, but in some cases I can see myself looking away, Shane O'Mara, a professor of experimental brain research at Trinity College, Dublin, reviews available evidence on torture, interrogation, and brain function under stress. And he says that torture may get people to do things they don't want to do, but this does not mean it extracts real information. He cites extensive evidence that stress, fear, and pain undermine the brain's executive functions, including recall and cognition, making memory fallible and pushing individuals into confabulation that they may actually believe. Memories are not recorded chronologically. They are fragile and subject to revision and loss with time, suggestion, and new information. Memory reconstructs, it does not reproduce. Now, the CIA has an enhanced interrogation program, and by its own admission, they say that it was ineffective, morally catastrophic, and founded on fiction. CIA operatives admitted they based their approach on Jack Bauer, a character in 24 whom torture generally saves the day. The Senate report is dark but essential reading for a president claiming moral authority in the war against terror. Wanting something to be true doesn't make it so. As O'Mara says, using torture to obtain information is the equivalent of evolving a cure for leukemia out of your own inner consciousness. I would not completely reject the decision to torture if it was undertaken in an emergency and with right intentions. Torture must be prosecuted as a crime wherever it occurs, making a previous judgment that torture is permissible in some situations and hazardous and immoral. Recognizing mitigating conditions when they arise, on the other hand, is critical. Thank you for your time, and have a good night.